He asks the cloaked figure who she is and why she is doing this, then makes a sound of pain. After which the Absolute is surprised, asking who he is. The maid announces the arrival of the Master's son and greets him. When he asserts, the woman smiles and asks. He claims they met, and the other explains that it is the spirit of Lord Absolute as they fight with swords. Then he repeats it again, and the man in armor agrees. Absolute Arc is the son of a merchant. Following this, he heard the man's name, and he explained the feeling of a strong connection. He claims that the world matches the novel The Chronicles of Lynn Anna, and identifies himself as a villain named Arkham, who brought despair to the people of Lynn Anna. Meanwhile, he announces that Absolute Arc will be killed by Hitsuji Aruto. He explains that the reason for his defeat is simple and says that he had no allies. And then the Absolute announces that the protagonist has the power to solve the kingdom's problems. And as the situation worsens, the nobles begin to switch to his side. One explains that he came face to face with the protagonist and was left completely alone. The other explains that his fate was to die at the hands of a hero with immense power. At the same time, he claims that he will not accept death at the hands of the protagonist, offering two options: become an ally or remain a villain. Absolute believes that the first option will not work due to hatred towards the hero. Moreover, he eliminated all the mechanics of the original events, prepared to become absolute evil and crush the main character, and the two men surrender and confirm that for this to happen, they first need to make a couple of reliable allies. She argues that it is important to be yourself. Furthermore, the two men explain that they are servants of the Absolute, and the Absolute is listening. He noticed that the young master's swordsmanship had greatly improved, and in the end he was completely defeated. Ultimately, the Absolute is confident he can instantly master any technique he tries. He possesses healing skills, barrier creation, masterful swordsmanship, and a potentially destructive skill he calls absolute evil. He calls himself a cheater, then smiles and says things are getting even more interesting, after which he will harden himself and find allies, and the man turns to the Lord Absolute. An employee reports to Mr. Viren about the training and education. Viren explains that he was informed about them. When Viren Arc says that he is doing well and must hone himself to perfection, as expected from the next head of the Arc family. He explains that his father, Viren Arc, strives to make their family the strongest in the kingdom, but at first he seemed scary and then turned out to be a real villain. Absolute then speaks of his drive for success and the joy of receiving praise so long ago. He admits he was amazed to see the training sessions. The man announces a reception to celebrate Prince Michael's 10th birthday, hosted by the royal family, and advises the boy to join. Following this, Absolute announces his return to training, while the other man warns him of possible misunderstandings due to his abilities and asks him to behave carefully at the reception. He didn't expect the other to look him in the eye and not be afraid of his aura. Meanwhile, he informs the butler that the young master is rapidly developing and has already reached level 40. Absolute claims that putting pressure on influential families will eliminate his problems and make him the most powerful in the kingdom. The man notes that the same thing happened in his time, but his reputation suffered. Absolute explains that this is the Arc family's nature. And then he says that reputation is secondary, and what matters most is force, which is clear to everyone, violence. The other man sighs and says, well, anyway, he says that in order to be loyal to the nobles, one must improve the opinion of Lord Absolute, otherwise the foundation will collapse. At the same time, the man asks to accept congratulations. The Absolute talks about the Royal Highness the Prince. The man with the boy notices Duke Arc and asks who is next to him. He says that he is glad to meet for the first time and gives his name, and the man is surprised to recognize him. Besides, the Absolute asks what his name is. He claims his name is Chris Jose and he is from the Jose clan. Furthermore, the Absolute expresses joy at the meeting, emphasizing that he is also pleased. Another man notes that even the lower nobility dislikes them, which makes him fearful for the future. She is surprised that he does not understand the importance, and he replies that he does not want to interfere. Ultimately, Absolute explains that this is the best way to avoid collapse. He explains that it is time for the adults to be left alone and that they can go into the next room. After which, several people are talking in the corridor of a large building. The Absolute says that it cannot be weak, but a man always acts according to his own rules and is not afraid of the consequences. When he says that this is a reception organized by the royal family, he suggests leaving here and asks to take a look quickly. Absolute looks at the children in the hall. He then notes that their families are of lower rank, but is surprised by their courage to come here. The group merely nods in agreement. He declares that they are ruining the party. The Absolute memorizes their faces and orders them to leave. Everyone runs away. He then explains that he will not fight them and warns that he will use force if they do not leave. She explains that she doesn't believe what's happening. He says that he doesn't know what to do, and the other says that urgent action is needed. Meanwhile, Absolute explains that he means no harm and extends his hand, and the other man flinches. He stated that he would not surrender and was ready to use force if the enemy did not stop. And then she apologizes for interfering and reveals that she is Lady Cruel of the Cruel family. Absolute says that she is asking for mercy for Mr. Chris. At the same time, he asks Chris to answer on behalf of everyone and explains that they allowed themselves to be humiliated. He tells them about his bad reputation and asks why they are here. Besides, the Absolute explains that they should have known how to treat them without adults around, but he remains silent. She argues that this is inevitable for the families of the subjects and asks what they are offering. Moreover, the Absolute is surprised and asks why they did not wait for him. He explained that the incident occurred due to a difference in rank and that he would not tolerate such behavior. In the end, the Absolute says that they showed strength of spirit. They dared to go alone, even though they were afraid, but he is not finished yet. He declares that everyone is to blame. The others listen with surprise and concern. After which he assigns a punishment, and the two next to him cry and react tensely. Absolute says he doesn't understand. The girl is surprised. He explains that it's impossible. The other man says it's strange. When he explains how you can combine water magic with wind magic. Absolute says that his magic is water and wind, with which a lot can be done, and the girl notes that this is to be expected from Mr. Absolute. He then asks Chris if he has fire magic. Chris explains that he has fusion magic and the like, and the girl says she'll practice now. Absolute says fire magic can be used in different ways depending on one's level of training. He advises focusing on developing one's strengths. Following this, Chris and Lady began to pay off their debts by organizing training sessions and tea parties. The Absolute says that the gap between them is narrowing, and the boy addresses him as Mr. Absolute. In the meantime, he would like to ask about the magic that was used to help him at the reception. He explains that it is healing magic and is surprised that he knew about it. And then Absolute tells what he heard about the mastery of magic and swordsmanship, and two servants greet Lord Absolute, Lord Chris and Milady. He suggests a break, and she is amazed that in addition to the 4 elements, she has mastered healing and dark magic. At the same time, she says that she is delighted and turns to Mr. Absolute. The Absolute claims that women awaken the protective instincts in men, and that in battle it is not only the presence of useful spells that plays a decisive role. Moreover, the Arc clan's unique magic, spirit summoning, allows the summoning of 12 high-level spirits and also sets the conditions for recognition as heir at the age of 15. Absolute reports that, in the original story, magic was so powerful that it could wipe out up to 40% of the enslavement squad. He also tells Chris of his desire to select and train a slave from their area and asks to speak with Count Jose about it. He also requests that the maid be prepared for his trip to the school. Chris agrees. He explains that it is possible, but asks if they should choose one of the servants of the city of Arc, and she says not to worry. In the end, he declared that he didn't like the residents of this house. The Absolute says they need to find someone who definitely won't betray them. A slave won't betray their master. He doesn't want to give the protagonist a single chance. Then he asks if they suspected anything, after which she asks him about himself, and he replies that it's not worth it. She sighs, he says he understands and will organize it. When he has everything ready, he will contact you, says Absolute. He says MIT, the two women nod. Then one of the maids reports that the boy lives in the mansion, while the other clarifies that he does not look like the owner of the house. He says he can't forget about her, and she replies that she doesn't want to hurt him. Following this, she asks if it will be the same at the academy, and then expresses surprise, calling him poor sir. He admits to being inattentive, and she offers to console him. Meanwhile, she claims that this is something else, but pure love. Absolute explains that, like him, he did not understand Mr. Absolute and ended up leaving him alone, but at that reception he helped them. And then he explains that she has already been told about the skill, Absolute Evil. She confirms and says that, after hearing this story, she felt pain in her chest. She says that she wants to be close to Absolute if he is left alone again, and explains that this is exactly what she was thinking. At the same time, she advises to approach everything with humor and not to hold back in the presence of others while he remains silent. He believes he did the right thing by approaching her first. She confirms this. He also says that he needs to keep other girls from flirting with him and lay the foundation for the future, and she is surprised, asking if these are really his true motives. She believes that it is better for Mr. Absolute to have many allies. In addition, the man greets and thanks for coming, standing next to the girl. He asks for favor today. He ended up picking up a lot of slaves on request, and Chris will be accompanying them. They ask him to let him know if they need anything. He explains that it concerns security. He explains that this is not necessary and invites them in, and the man explains that restrictions begin with slaves and offers to arrange things in more detail. After which the man explains that he doesn't like being in debt and there is no need to lower prices. Absolute thanks Count Jose for his work, and he reciprocates his gratitude. When one of them says that he will bring slaves here one by one, the other explains that their actions are bound by a contract skill, so they will not cause problems. He asks to wait and explains that he will let you know if anyone is interested, and the other one clarifies that this is an individual system. Absolute then explains that the choice must be made wisely, as this is his first and last purchase, and compares it to buying a house. He explains that he will be bringing slaves one at a time from now on and asks her to let him know if he is interested in a slave, and she says that is all the villainous aristocrat needs. He then explains that Chris is still young enough to learn how to fight properly, and tells her about the Wolf Tribe, a tribe of warriors who, even at this age, are stronger than other races, and she marvels at how wonderful that is. He reveals that she is currently level 18 with the skills Mercy and Ferocity, and explains that given her growth potential, he would level her up as it is perfect for preventing surprises. Meanwhile, he tells her that it is better to be kind to her, and she advises to buy them now while they are young. She agrees and is surprised. And then the girl begs him to stop, and Elizabeth says that she is 43 years old. He says he can't relax and has to work. At the same time, he explains that he cannot let Absolute die, and Absolute says that he is not going to give up. He claims to be Maria Stella. Moreover, he claims that the name Maria Stella seems familiar to him. He explains that Maria was once a noblewoman, but became a slave because of debt, and she explains that she is an experienced knight. Furthermore, the Absolute explains that she has yet to awaken her magical powers. He claims that Maria Stella is the heroine of a fairy tale about the kingdom of Lainan, and she explains that the heroine is like an older sister. Ultimately, Absolute explains that at first she was cold, but the protagonist buys her and she becomes kind to him and then is surprised that she had to be such a heroine. She invites him to rest by placing his knees on her, but to continue training after waking up. After which she says that he has such a cute sleeping face. She offers to help and explains that men are always like this, and he is surprised and asks not to be embarrassed, promising to help as best he can. When he found himself the main character in an absurd situation, he says that by keeping Maria for himself, he will deprive the protagonist of his power. Then Maria will be able to use magic once she finishes her business, as she has great potential. Absolute decides and he asks, Elizabeth, and warns not to try to sell Elizabeth to him. Following this, he says that he will buy 2 people, asks her to go and request a contract, and also apologizes to Chris and explains that Elizabeth will be in good hands with her. The Absolute declared himself the master, and the other 2 would be his servants. Meanwhile, he clarifies that this man is considered one of the villains of the country, and he expresses his surprise and disgust. He explains that now that she knows, it's no wonder she feels disgusted. She reveals that he's from the Ark family, and then he shouts that he would rather die than endure this, and asks what the interlocutor is going to do with them. He stated that he did not plan to kill her, and she clarified that it was because of the Yaker family's bad reputation. At the same time, the Absolute reminds them that they are his slaves, while the two women admit that they have not yet figured out the situation. He says he doesn't believe it, and she exclaims. Besides, he is breathing heavily. She says she can't take it anymore, and he explains that the situation is very difficult. Furthermore, the Absolute warns her to be careful with her speech. The woman apologizes and agrees. The Absolute explains that he forced the two women to submit. Maria speaks. She ended up worrying about the dirty things that make her act, but she realizes that in the end she does ordinary things. The woman asks about the Absolute. The girl replies that she doesn't know. He then notes the aggressive tone of his speech, and she points to an expressive face conveying the story. He claims that he never raised his hand against servants and lower-ranking nobles, despite public opinion. When the Absolute explains that she always gives the impression of being a bad person, the maid is surprised and exclaims why this is happening. He announced his intention to resign in a few months. He then explains that they have already mastered the work of a maid and are ready to start working independently, and she asks him to take care of the Absolute. Absolute says that he cannot allow himself to be weak, and the woman assures him that she will always support him and believes in his strength. Following this, the woman explains that since she officially becomes Ansama's servant, she has the right to know about Ansama's absolute evil skills. He remains silent, and she explains that the skill creates a terrible impression. Meanwhile, the Ark family's servants explain that because Absolute Sama is so serious, she rarely smiles, and so they engage in hidden affairs. He says it's their responsibility as adults and admits it's asking a lot, given her age. And then he asks Maria. She explains that she handed over the work to MIT Sama and will take care of him, and he asks to continue to support Absolute Sama. She reported that Mit told her about his skill. At the same time, the Absolute claims that he does not care about the opinions of other people. He knows that everyone sees him differently, and even if the whole world hates him, this will not change his attitude. He claims it's bittersweet, and she adds that it's a little sad. Besides, he screams. She screams at him and orders him to move away. In addition, the Absolute explains that she will be there as a slave, a servant and a sister, asking to be allowed to heal his wounded heart, and he says that he will never allow himself to be left alone. She asks him to let him go, explains that she understands, smiles and asks if she can join them. In the end, he yells that it's not necessary, and she explains that despite this, they still took a bath. He claims that this will destroy the Ark family, after which he refuses, and she claims the opposite. She screams and Absolute says that he always tries to look stupid, but in reality he is not, and asks why she thinks so. When he explains that he confused her. A few months later, he asked his interlocutor about his plans to retire in a couple of months. The woman then explains that Absolute can now handle the cleaning on his own and asks her to take care of him for her, and the other woman says, He asks if she is afraid of him, and she explains that she is not afraid at all but asks him to understand her. Following this, the head maid explains that by becoming the Absolute's maid, she has the right to know about his skill, absolute evil, and the maid is surprised by this. She says his power is frightening, but he remains silent. Meanwhile, the servant explains that the servants of the Ark family sympathize with the young master, so they inevitably end up taking on secret assignments, and the master becomes extremely serious and rarely smiles. She believes that the responsibility for this lies with adults and admits that it is asking too much, because he is still young. And then Absolute asks Maria to continue supporting him. Maria agrees, explaining that she has taken over Mrs. MIT's duties and will take care of him. He reports that Ms. MIT told him about her skill. At the same time, Absolute Ark claims that he doesn't care about other people's opinions. He is who he is, and he knows that everyone sees him differently, and the man asks if this bothers him. He says that with bitterness comes sadness. Moreover, she hugs Absolute from behind. He is surprised, and she screams for him to pay attention. He screams, asks to leave him alone and asks what is going on. She also calls him young master and asks if she can join them. Absolute claims that this will allow him to destroy the ark race while the group prepares the carriage. As a result, he refuses to wash, and she reminds him of the benefits of hygiene. In the original story, the Ark family is portrayed as villains, but in reality, they are heroes working in the shadows to protect the nation. After which he speaks of possible betrayal, and she notes the risks of serving the royal family. Absolute discusses countermeasures and asks about the mission. Another clarifies that gangs unaffiliated with the Ark family, subordinate to the imperial family, are operating in the capital. Their number is approximately 300. When he says that we need to kill them all, Absolute promises to leave no one behind. He then claims that the main culprits are likely members of the Emperor's noble family, and the location is the aquamarine territory on the border between the Lena Kingdom and the Empire. He reports that the Noir family is involved in the Empire's underground activities and is seeking to expand its influence to other countries, which is why the Linen Kingdom has been attacked. Following this, Absolute talks about the long-standing conflict between the Noir family and the Ark family, which are opposing organizations, mentioning Maria and Ulf. The man announces the mission and hands over the preparations to the woman. One of them asks where he's going. Meanwhile, she promises to go with him and he agrees. She doesn't understand the reason, and the other one says that it's not their fault and they need to keep working. And then he asks them to be careful and take care of themselves. She agrees, and the crowd declares the capture of the country, crushing old enemies. He says that the era of the 7 arcs is in the past, and the Absolute asks what it is. At the same time, he screams that it is a dark hole and jumps into it. The Absolute strikes, the man retreats, the 3 observers approach. He also explains that this is teleportation magic and asks to calm down, and he says that those who escaped the magic should attack this bastard. He asks what is happening to them, and the Absolute exclaims. Besides, he claims that's all. Absolute considers this a waste and asks what unsung heroes means. He claims they're just convenient pawns. The other man says the royal family is hopeless and he needs power. He eventually explains the need for force to contain the rebels, after which the man in the cloak runs away and the other screams and falls next to the body. He declares that he serves the Noir family, and if they lay a hand on him, the family will not remain silent. Absolute explains that he was looking for a worthy enemy, and first he must die. After which Maria greets him, and he reminds her that he already told her to go to bed. The Absolute says that the master is fulfilling his duty to the country, and she claims that he has always fought for her. When he explains that even at such a young age he really hates it. Absolute says he hates it when adults force his young master to fight, and he explains that nothing happened to him and he is fine, but she says that he is injured. Then she says that his heart is wounded and he feels no pain. Absolute says he's beaten and numb from the pain. He explains that he's gotten used to it, or so he thought. She asks if it's Absolute-sama, and clarifies that if it is, then she screwed up. Following this, he explains that he will not deny it and that it is already late, so it is better to go to bed quickly, and she says that she understands, but it is not for him to say this. She asks to sleep with them tonight, but he refuses. Meanwhile, she talks about a martial arts tournament in the capital, and the girl explains to Absolute that she is confident in his ability to enter the under-15 group and invites him to participate. He explains that he will participate in the group until the age of 15 to assess the strength of his peers, and Absolute says that this is too close. And then he's surprised and asks what a hero means. He explains that a hero will also be participating in the competition. He shouts, "The family of the Marquis of Mirai." At the same time, a bird sings on the balcony. Absolute is silent, lying next to her in bed. He whispers and touches the other's chest. Moreover, the maid Maria Stella greets the master and asks where he learned this. He said that he would not give up and would fight to the end. Besides, he holds what he has, and the bird screams to go away. She says it was a tough day, and he tried his best. She adds that the owner gave her chocolate. She finally admits she didn't know such a delicious and sweet dish existed until the owner suggested it. The other woman replies that it was excellent and asks if anything happened at breakfast. Absolute is surprised by the master's resentment toward the maid. The maid claims the master wasn't particularly angry. The other woman apologizes and explains that Ulva was eavesdropping using her skill. After which she says that she had the same idea and hopes that the owner will rely on them more, and he explains that this is the same tenderness of Hisama. He explains that they're planning a mock sword fight today and asks if Maria is working. She replies that she sometimes goes to the kitchen and wants to become strong enough to protect her master. When she says she can leave today, he asks if she didn't help yesterday and wonders if she has anything else to do. She says that it is necessary to finish everything, and the other one agrees. Then she tells the owner not to expect any favors. He asks for another fight, but she refuses. Following this, Maria Stella claims to be an aristocrat, while in the background there is a struggle with another man. He claims that Maria is an excellent swordswoman, and she is surprised. Meanwhile, Absolute claims that his father was a wonderful knight, and his mother was strict and loving. She says their family of 4 lived in peace and happiness, and she has a sweet brother who is in poor health. And then she says that she can't sleep, and he replies that he's tired and wants to rest. She says that she is with her dad. At the same time, she says that restoration magic is rare and there are no cures, and he is surprised by this. She claims that there must be something, and he explains that it is either him or his father. Moreover, money was required for healing, the highest spiritual rank and potions were used, but the two people remain inseparable. She says she has lost 3 loved ones and is left with only one big debt, and then she is surprised. Besides, she says that she has more important things to do, and he is surprised, asking if this is true. He explains that he will not be able to repay the debt even if he sells all his property, and she tells him that she has become a slave in the market. As a result, his future as a knight became a past, and his everyday life was left without his parents and brother. Absolute refuses to fight, but the woman does not listen to him and starts the fight. After which she says that she thought of him as the same age as her dead brother, and he explains that everything is different now. He says that the proud and wounded master does not show weakness, and she notes that this evokes pity and admiration. When the Absolute screams, she strikes with her sword. Maria Stella was born a noblewoman. Her children fight with swords. Then she calls Maria and Ortega, and he is surprised. He says his father was a great knight and his mother was a strict but very loving woman, adding that they left him with important lessons. Following this, he tells that he had a brother, Ortega, who was always happy about everything in the world, and that their family was happy. She can't sleep, he's tired and wants to rest while the other man lies in bed. Meanwhile, she tells her mother about her father and Ortega, and her mother explains something, leaning on the table. She says healing magic is powerless and there's no spell that can cure them. He's surprised. And then she says that there must be something they can do, otherwise father and brother. She says that they borrowed money for treatment, turned to bishops and potions, but both died. At the same time, she says that she lost her beloved family and was left only with an unbearable debt. And he says, He explains that he had no choice but to follow those who had lent him money for his relative's treatment, and that he did not want to repay good with evil. Besides, she claims that she still has unfinished business, and he asks if she is sure. The man claims that there is no choice, and she explains that even having given up everything, she could not pay off the debt, and she was sold as a slave, and the lands became the property of the kingdom. In addition, he informs the future knight that peaceful life is over. She says that she feels not only sympathy for the master, but also love, and the Absolute says that the master is trying to be strong by hiding his pain. In the end, he won't back down and she won't let him pass. He says a man makes a girl cry by attacking a woman with a sword. She then reveals that this is her 10th defeat in a row and asks if there is anyone who can defeat him, even with swordsmanship. He doubts it, but his father can easily surpass him, and the Absolute claims that he is a real monster. When she says that it is difficult to hear such things from the Absolute, she explains that while the father remains loyal to the royal family, it cannot be said that he is completely on their side. Absolute asks if this information was in the original story, then explains that father did not appear in it, and they must be prepared for the possibility that he might turn on the enemy side. He then explains that there are stains on his shirt, and she says that she made a sandwich for him and smiles. She says that he is tired and can lie down on her lap. He refuses. After this, she says that he is confused, and he is surprised and looks at her, after which she smiles with a blush. He is surprised, and she explains that this is a moment from the original story. Meanwhile, Absolute talks about a martial arts tournament in the capital, and she pours tea. She says the sweets look delicious, and he explains that they will go there. And then she says that Mr. Absolute will definitely win, and he explains that it is not him and throws down the gauntlet. He smiles, and a girl in a maid costume falls over while trying to catch a cup. The two onlookers are surprised. Then she notices it was close. At the same time, the Absolute explains that Vul will be participating, asks if he rules, and the two listeners are surprised to notice that everyone is watching. She says that Vul is weaker than his master and will disgrace them. He also assures her there's no reason to worry, as she's trained with him and won't lose to Black. She's surprised and offers to treat him to a popular dessert in the capital if he defeats the hero on the way back. Absolute declares that he will acquire everything he needs if she becomes champion. She expresses a desire for new weapons and other items. He points out that she feels as if she has already won. She also believes that becoming a champion is a sure sign of strength. He expresses a desire for the master to assess Vul's level of strength and usefulness. The Absolute expresses a desire for candy, then predicts that Wool will defeat the hero and obtain everything she desires. Wool is confident of her victory and promises to celebrate. Ultimately, the announcement of the release of the first volume of the comic contains information about the action taking place in the estate of Marquis Mirai, where someone calls for Alicia. Alicia Miri tells her father that the fool is probably lying around somewhere. He explains that the hero skill is the most powerful ability bestowed by a god. Those born with such power are given the title of hero, because they become the nation's protectors. After which the man tells the hero about his responsibilities, and the woman is surprised that now is the time. He says it is the capital and the tournament arena. When he urges Alicia to hurry, she says his frivolity is the reason she's constantly scolded. She's surprised he's so active today. He explains that someone from the Ark family will be attending. He says it's getting more and more interesting, and she sighs and says it's tiring. The official then explained that Mr. Alt was participating on the recommendation of the Marquis of Mirai and would compete in the under-15 category. She explains the tournament rules which prohibit magic, and the man heads to the waiting room. After this, Absolute says that he is leaving, and she wishes him luck and explains that she will watch from the stands. He promises to defeat the Ark family and destroy the villains. She hopes for the best, and he turns to him. Meanwhile, he says there's something they need to do before Vul's performance. Absolute understands, and she offers him water, explaining that she prepared it herself. He's surprised when she offers him the water she's prepared and agrees to take some at room temperature. She asks if he wants warm or cold, and then she says "Tadam" and explains that it is fresh water. Absolute agrees that it is water and adds that it is tasty. At the same time, he claims that his water tastes better than that of other water mages, and the girl invites Chris to try the water she prepared. He asks if she drinks the prepared water. The Absolute demands silence. The crowd reports that Will has left. The girl asks what kind of weapon she has, and the Absolute notes that these are not claws and that she will fight almost with her bare hands. Moreover, Vul's greatest strength is her stunning speed. Her short stature makes long weapons unsuitable, so she was designed to deal significant damage with a single punch. She says what one would expect from Mr. Absolute, and both he and Absolute listen. Furthermore, one asks about her condition, while the other explains that Will has grown up, but is still a child, and even with high speed, she may not have enough strength. He also clarifies that the strategy of not contacting her and hiding her trump cards is basic. She says that she is an adult now, and he explains that he trained with her. He finally lands a punch. She dodges and runs away. He's surprised by her speed, and the other one explains that her opponent can't keep up with her. She compares herself to a wolf ready to attack. After which he screams, and she explains that even in human form she gives in to instinct and runs around her prey like a wild animal. She screams as she strikes the man. Beast men are truly beautiful. When he says it's an absolute victory, She explains her choice of weapon, he apologizes for his doubts, and the Absolute says that he should not be praised and confirms the possibility of another duel with the hero. He then won thanks to strong support. Absolute declares he will test his abilities. He notes his opponent's failure and promises to see for himself. Following this, one says that he is fighting with all his might, and the other explains that Chris is truly a hero. Absolute claims he's no pushover, but he doesn't use his hero skill properly, just swinging his sword and overpowering his opponent with brute force, making his tactics inferior to Vul's. Meanwhile, he explains his victory, and the crowd rejoices. He claims that the hero is not very experienced, explains that there are few children with the same experience as Absolute, and the other advises the hero to do the Arc family's dirty work to gain experience, level up, and strengthen his mind. And then he says that the final of the capital's martial arts tournament in the under 15 category has finally arrived. He went very far, and the other says that there were strong opponents there, but they were no match for the hero. At the same time, he promises to return as a worthy hero. She explains that it is for her master, but he says he does not understand. She also says that she appreciates the attention she receives. He is surprised that he cannot fight the girl and shouts at her not to underestimate her as she kicks his sword. Moreover, Absolute claims that he will not lose. The girl is surprised, and two men on the balcony discuss what is happening. The woman falls to the floor after being hit, and the onlookers watch in surprise. She ends up screaming and expressing determination in the arena. She expects victory, he sighs. The girl then reveals that she is a popular idol from the Arc family, and Absolute explains that this is necessary for the villainous aristocrat. She is surprised by the victory, and three people nearby explain. When the hero's skill became a problem, the owner didn't fully utilize it. She knew this and prevented him from attacking, lest she lose. Absolute says the hero is weaker due to his lack of combat sense. He needs to be kept an eye on. The girl suggests they eat some sweets and go shopping. He then tells her that she has done a good job, and she promises to reward him. He encourages her to move forward and take whatever she wants, and she is surprised that even being a hero, he lost. She then explains that Alt believed he could win by relying on strength alone, and hopes that defeat will teach him something. She says her father should have come up with countermeasures instead of leaving everything to Alta. She explains that it's unfair to scold her for caring for her brother, who skips classes. Meanwhile, the father decided to take the hero in. Alicia asks Alt how he's feeling. Alt explains that he lost. He decides, she asks, he confirms. She is glad that she believed in him and that he realizes his duty as a hero. And then he says that he will destroy the Arc family. He noticed the girl at the end and decided that the nobles who forced her to fight didn't deserve to exist. The girl confirmed the rumors about Rodark. At the same time, she explains that the Arc family is a high noble, and if he gets involved with them, the Mirai family will suffer, and also says that it is pointless for a commoner like him to destroy high nobles, and asks if he is listening to her. He suggests to Alicia that they overthrow the Arc family, and she is surprised that he did not listen. Moreover, he explains that he cannot cope alone, but if Alicia is with him, they can win. She advises against contacting the Arc family due to possible consequences for the Mirai family. He also explains that Alicia thinks differently and says that he must gather soldiers from the royal family and high nobles, and then confirms this. Absolute explains that Michael wants to be brought to the royal palace, and he confirms this. He eventually explains that Michael cannot be allowed to become an enemy and reveals that Michael was likely providing military support to the hero, after which he reports that Prince Michael has summoned them to the palace, and she is surprised. She asks what happened and explains that she might be killed because Will made a mistake, after which he claims that no one will touch her, explaining that he probably caught her eye at the tournament and wanted to take her for himself, and she calls him master. She asks if they will give Will back and if the master hates her. When the Absolute assures her that he will not give it up, she refuses the offer unless she wants to side with Prince Michael, and he does everything he can to protect her. He claims that she will eventually be his, and she is surprised that she has always belonged to the master. Then Michael Linana reports that Absolute Arc and the slave Vul have done a good job and invites them to come in and sit down. She calls Prince Michael and he asks why there are so many guards. He then explains that the security guards are warning him of a disaster if something happens to him and asks him to be patient for a little while, and the man asks if there is too much protection. He asks why they have been called today and explains that it will not take long, just as long as it takes to obey. Meanwhile, the Absolute demands the slave girl be given to him, promising to spare her, but the man refuses. The woman asks if that's all he wanted to say and says they'll be leaving. He asks what they are doing and why the guards have drawn their swords, warning them to return them to their sheaths one last time, and the other man laughs. And then the Absolute says that will belongs to the master, and the girl with cat ears explains that the master will never lose to him. He screams that he is lost and will die, and the man in uniform with long hair is surprised. At the same time, the Absolute tells Vul to call for help and explains that Prince Michael has gone mad and ordered the guards to kill the Arch-Heir. Vul confirms this, and the heir is surprised. He claims to be always working and explains that he cannot afford to rest, then looks forward resolutely. Besides, the Absolute warned. He refuses to repeat it a second time. Furthermore, the Absolute explains that it is impossible to kill the heir of a high noble family because of a slave, and the other is surprised and asks to wait for the Absolute Arc. He says that he can't stand it, and he explains that he can't hear him. In the end, he declares that he cannot stand his eyes, his behavior, and his very existence. Absolute speaks clearly, and the other explains that he tried to kill Absolute and warns of the consequences, after which Absolute asks if this is true. After which he asks how your majesty was doing. He reports that the king has come and asks about his intentions. When the Absolute explains that there is no need to retreat and that one should fully implement what one has planned, the man listens attentively. He talks about a book that tells the story of a man who defeated demons and protected his people. He then stated that he did not understand what kind of footage it was. Absolute reports that he made the recording using a magical item. Following this, Ark explains that his name is being called, and she and the other man listen. Absolute smiles, the man with the mustache turns tensely. Meanwhile, the man explains that it was Michael's doing, and he never imagined it would come to this. The man lying on the bed says that cutting off the guard's hands was too much and that everything could have been resolved peacefully. He claims the royal guard is innocent and must correct Prince Michael's mistake at the cost of their lives. He then adds that he is not to blame. She is surprised and asks, "So?" And then he asks how the royal family is going to take responsibility for this incident. The Absolute announces that attempts to forcibly take a slave, murder, and conscript a high-ranking nobleman are punishable by life imprisonment. He also clarifies that compensation will be paid to the maid and herself, and Prince Michael will be placed under house arrest. At the same time, he explains the need to remove Prince Michael from the position of heir, and the man is surprised. He says that without an heir, the royal family will end. The woman suggests another option. The man claims the problem will be solved if she marries and suggests making Michael crown prince. He agrees that Haniel is more capable than Michael. He also explains that the ruler is blind and will not be able to perform her duties. But the king and his advisors can take care of this. The Absolute demands compensation for himself and the maid, as well as the removal of Michael from the position of crown prince. Moreover, the man claims that the decision belongs to his majesty. She doesn't eat sweets, but he made a cake especially for her. In the end, she asks if everything is okay, and he explains that this is compensation from the king and suggests that she eat as much as she wants without worrying. He claims that the prince's enemy is the right choice. She considers it almost like he's the enemy of the entire kingdom of Linana and asks why he protected her. After which he reveals that the royal family attempted to forcibly take away from the Ark family the one who had sworn allegiance to them. He claims that all the land belongs to the Ark family and there's no reason to give up a single slave. She explains that he's the Ark family's slave and is obligated to protect him as their master. When Absolute says this is not news, she is surprised. He claims he was abandoned because he was weak. Then the Absolute explains that he cannot let them leave, and the man standing nearby says that he ordered the entrance and exit to be guarded. The man on the throne turns to Michael and asks if he understands what he has done. He then asks his interlocutor if he could say the same thing if he saw it. He is surprised and doesn't believe it's possible. He says someone else ruined his birthday party and wanted to teach him a lesson. Meanwhile, Michael learns that the Ark family will be sacrificed, and he will lose his position as crown prince. He doesn't believe it, but the man confesses to the crime. He warns that for this they will put you in prison and asks you to be grateful. And then he must resign as crown prince. The man explains that this will be the end of the royal family. He advises him to reflect on his actions, show the footage to the nobles, and apologize to the Absolute. Michael apologizes, and the man with the mustache says that he was leading him and asks if he heard him. At the same time, Maria Stella admits that she can't keep up with them, and this is a little frustrating, despite her admiration for them. Will claims it's his turn and calls Maria to battle. Moreover, Absolute Ark refers to himself as Lord Absolute. Ark turned 15 years old. He also advises enrolling in the capital's academy to begin the main storyline of the Chronicles of Linana. She offers to wipe his back, he refuses, and she asks if they have already done everything themselves. In the end, she says that she now goes to the bathroom alone, and he explains the same thing. The Absolute announces that everything has been decided and turns to the father. After which he says that the last time they fought was when the interlocutor was 10 years old. Absolute explains that he uses a black hole and a black flame slash, after which he demonstrates a powerful blow, and then is surprised that his level is already above 90. When he admits his strength, but explains that the difference between the experiences is too great and warns that this will sound very cruel to him. Absolute attacks the enemy with a sword. Then he decides to counterattack. The Absolute strikes, breaks the glass and looks at the hole. He then explains that this is the man who has defended the country for decades, and says he knew of his strength but didn't expect such might. Then he lands abruptly, sword in hand. He started, the other approves. Absolute. Meanwhile, he thinks that efforts should be increased and is surprised. Absolute parries the sword strike by raising his hands in front of his face. And then he delivers a powerful blow with his sword, destroying the barrier, and the other man watches intently. The image shows an explosion destroying a rock surface. At the same time, he deflects the blow with his sword, and the Absolute prepares for the next move. He informs the Absolute about his strengthening and is surprised. Moreover, the Absolute is silent, and the other shouts that this is their end and asks the Absolute to surpass him. He calls upon the spirits and commands the primordial spirit. Furthermore, the Absolute says that he will not let him leave, and he replies that he is not going to do that. He explains the name, Black Hole. Ultimately, the Absolute says that the magic won't be transmitted unless he's killed, and asks why he was spared. He refuses to sacrifice his parents for the sake of power, and the man destroyed his life for the sake of the country and asks if the price of life for the sake of passing on magic is too high. After which, Absolute admits that death was a common occurrence for him, and although he was previously ready to do anything to inherit power, he now changes his point of view. He says that if he doesn't die, no one else will master their inherited power. He admits he's thought about it. When the Absolute says that without unique magic he will not be able to control spirits other than those with whom he has a contract, and asks to be allowed to make a contract with a summoned spirit, he is ready to accept such an outcome. He says that the magic will pass to him after he dies of old age, and that a contract with a strong spirit requires enormous magical power, but in his case it is possible. He then explains that the loser carries out the will of the winner. He informs him that 3 of the 10 spirits are under the control of the Spirit King, clarifies that Puska hasn't fully mastered his power, but has formed a contract with a spirit, and asks if he's ready to form a contract with one of the spirits 3 years after graduating from the academy. He replies, yes. Following this, he declares his intention to lead the Ark family, to which she responds that she will accept this title with honor, addressing her father. He says that he never thought he would live to see the Absolute again and is glad that he is alive, and the Absolute explains that he almost lost to death. Meanwhile, he tells that he killed many people, even his father, not expecting to live so long, and the other man asks him not to talk like that. He claims that the Ark family has made a significant contribution to the country's development, and that he is not only a childhood friend but also a loyal ally. And then the man says that he is glad that the other is alive, and the old man explains that he would like Michael to show his strength in the quarrel then. The Absolute asserts his superiority, while the other man explains that he does not believe in the possibility of a good relationship because of Michael's inferiority complex and prejudices. At the same time he screams. Absolute apologizes. The man explains that his son, having become the head of the family, most likely will not work for the kingdom, and the fatigue from service is visible on his face. Moreover, he claims that at his age it is better to retire if he does not receive a decent salary. The Royal Academy of Linana and the surrounding streets with people passing by and a carriage. In addition, the man greets the Absolute and invites him to enter the carriage. He announces that this year Prince Michael will be a holy player and calls for caution and not to defame the name of Mr. Absolute. In the end, he claims that the girl in the monastic robe is a saint, and that the Absolute commands him to give it his all, confirming this with a decisive agreement. He explains that the heroine, Eliza, from the original story repeatedly healed the hero during battle thanks to her restoration skill. Her beauty and strength boost his fighting spirit. He and the other man explain that Saint Eliza is just as dangerous as the hero, and that she hasn't left the church yet. After which he says that they need to act before she starts thinking about the hero, and notices that it is the hero's bride, Alicia, who came without the groom. She smiles and runs forward sharply, and he shouts not to come closer and tries to stop her, creating a shield around himself. When he shouts that he doesn't believe it, the girl explains that Lady has become stronger after training, and the man says this with a smile. She predicts the outcome of the battle he strikes. She then reports her return and he comments on her improvements. She fought to avoid dishonoring her interlocutor's name, explains that his praise is an honor for her, and admits that she is very embarrassed. He then wished her luck in the fight and thanked her. She mentioned that Mr. Chris was also there, to which he replied, "Well done, lady." She asks who will be Lord Absolute's opponent, listing Duke Keiko, Marquis Mirai, and Lord Alicia, and he explains that he doesn't know. Meanwhile, he explains that the enemy can also be a saint, and the Absolute and the others are surprised by what they hear. Among the aristocrats, mostly girls participate, so only Duke Keiko remains, and then he is declared Arch. And then Tristan Keiko is rumored to be an individualist and talented even within his own family, but he didn't appear much in the original, so it's unknown what to expect from him. The Absolute speaks. Two are surprised. For prepare for battle in the arena. Meanwhile, the man explains that the fights are one-on-one, and the woman says that Saint Eliza specializes in support and her abilities are only evaluated in pairs. He is surprised by the name Egertslag Keiko. He explains that there will be a 2-on-2 match as an exception, and she specifies that the pairs are Absolute Arch and Alicia Mirai. Moreover, he claims that it is against Tristan Kako and Saint Eliza. Absolute admits he's lucky to be paired with Alicia to appreciate her strengths. Alicia Mirai claims this is their first meeting. He also prefers to fight one-on-one and share roles. He also possesses the ability to use magic for ranged attacks. She apologizes for the misunderstanding and explains that an aristocrat shouldn't act like that. He agrees to go along with her plan and promises to fight with honor. In the end, the Absolute affirms her holiness, and she only laughs in response. He shouts that they have started, and she releases a fireball towards the enemy. After which he says that it's her turn, and she explains that she is using protection and self-healing. The Absolute deals a powerful blow, causing an explosive flash. When he denies it, she is surprised to be there, after which he abruptly steps to the ground. She is surprised that he does not stop despite the hits, and Absolute explains that this is possible. She then reveals that she used a skill that removes the feeling of fear and wonders how things will turn out. The woman is surprised that the magic has no effect on the enemy, and the Absolute explains that Saint Eliza's skill allows her to act without fear. Following this, he says that it is high time and explains that one cannot fail the entrance exams, after which he declares that it is his turn. He declared that the Absolute's finest hour had come. Meanwhile, he heard about his interlocutor and his amazing talent, and also dreamed of fighting him. One claims that the dream will come true, while the other explains that today is a wonderful day. And then she says she's all excited. Absolute notices that his interlocutor is talking a lot. He threatens a massacre, and a fight begins. At the same time, he repels the attacks. He says it's fun, and she explains with her eyes closed. He reports that she is in pain. Besides, he is surprised by the success. Absolute is surprised that he lasted so long against him and suggests making this day their anniversary. Besides, he doesn't understand what anniversary it is, and she explains. He says they could win together with Alicia and asks why they don't fight together. Alicia clasps her hands over her chest, feeling tense. In the end, the Absolute says that even though he is supported by the Saint, he is fighting alone, and it would be low to fight two against one. He holds a knife in his hand and laughs, after which he claims to be strong. He says that there is no point in using nobility as an excuse after a defeat. When the Absolute reflects an enemy's attack, he strikes his hand against the opponent's sword. He explains that the fight will be held according to the rules, and she is surprised and calls him Wei. Tristan then reveals that he comes from a family renowned for martial arts, is strong, and successfully resists the Absolute thanks to the Saint's support, and wonders if Lark can win. The Absolute notes the opponent's swordsmanship, parries his blow and counterattacks. The man then shouts that he will help, and the woman calls him Mr. Tristan and calls Saint Eliza. The woman explains the Saint's blessing, and he thanks the Lady Saint for her help and says, "Thank you." Meanwhile, he screams that strength is overflowing him and attacks with a sword. Absolute reports that Tristan's strength and speed have increased, but he's not adapting to the changes. Absolute notes that there's nothing he can do about it. She then asks if this is their limit, and explains that body enhancement magic is not dangerous, but in large quantities it can become problematic. Absolute explains that the skill removes fear, and says that it subsides when the enemy suddenly attacks. At the same time, he says that he has seen enough and explains that it is time to end this, while simultaneously striking with his sword. The man is surprised when the Absolute delivers a powerful blow with his sword, knocking him back. The Absolute stares ahead, focused. He also says that next time they will fight for real one-on-one at the academy, and the man sitting against the wall explains that he has not yet reached his limit and that he was clearly pitted. The woman explains something, he turns around, and below them they announce that Ark and Mirai have won. Moreover, Absolute leaves with the sword, and the girl admits that she doesn't know what to do next. He threatens to destroy the Ark family and all villains. She asks him to give up. He is amazed at his strength and decides to return home to talk to Arth. As a result, guests gather in the hall of the Archive estate. He speaks and a group of people listen to him on the balcony. After which, Absolute says that everyone tried hard, trained hard and gave it their all, and will now enter the academy, where status is important, so they must show the unity of the Ark House. He says they are despised and considered villains for making a living with their hands covered in blood. When Absolute says their work saves lives, he knows they are simply living up to people's expectations and is proud of that work. He explains that the problem is why there are those who openly ridicule them. She then says that they are arrogant, and Absolute explains that they must show the unity of the Ark House. A group of people listen to the Absolute. He then says that he will always be on their side, explaining that as members of the Ark faction, they should be proud of being evil and show everyone their pride, to which the others agree. The Absolute claims that the beginning has been made, and he and the others move forward, choosing their path. Meanwhile, he talks about the rapid rise of the maid in the Ark family, and a group of people turn their attention to Absolute Ark. Absolute reports that the pressure and rumors are true, and the man with tiger ears calls Absolute Ark. And then he explains that one cannot relax and that everything must be kept under control while he is around, and explains that as the possessor of undeniable power, he and his subordinates must prove themselves. One warns, another refuses, the third admires, the fourth scolds. At the same time, a voice reports an attempt to approach her, to which the Absolute notes that he almost killed this man. He says to remember the Ark family and him as the head. Besides, he is surprised. Oriana Festa apologizes and explains that he was supposed to be helping, but ended up in Class B. Absolute asks him to stop flattering her, calming Mr. Chris down. In addition, the man congratulates the students on their admission and greets them, and those present applaud. He reports the Crown Prince's situation, and the Absolute reacts with restraint. In the end, he remains silent, and then explains that he has the extra status of Crown Prince, but it seems that it is still not enough for him. He says that the prince is waiting for the events in the plot, and she explains that she sees the best version of him. After which the Absolute explains that in the end only he will remain. He warns of the imminent start of events from the original and calls for preparation. When the Absolute says that he cannot lose and that events should not unfold according to the plot, one of the women asks the master. He admitted that he was a little lost in thought, but that he was okay, although he might look nervous. Then Absolute explained that their tasks today would be to go to the academy, prepare lunch, and ask them to behave properly. Both girls agreed. She relies on him and the other one smiles. Following this, he walks with 2 girls in dresses, and a group of 5 people greet each other. One says good morning, the other agrees. He stated that they would disperse and return for dinner. Meanwhile, she celebrates the greatness of the academy and its many people. He laughs and says that she now looks like the old wool, and she is surprised and explains that she wants to become as mature as he is, but not quite, and must be the perfect maid, after which he asks what happened to her since she was downcast. And then he says that she is already a wonderful maid and invites her to go, and she is surprised to recognize him. He calls her the girl from the tournament, and she looks at him in surprise. Another woman is standing next to her. At the same time, he admits that he did not expect the situation to develop in such a way. He asks who she is. She replies that she is looking at him intently. Besides, he asks, and the woman explains that she is at work. He yells at her to wait, and she explains that they need to stop. Another woman suddenly grabs his arm, causing him to be surprised. In addition, she points out the unacceptability of touching a maid of another house and reminds her of her belonging to the Ark family. He wanted to talk to her, but she was indignant, feeling guilty. She asked him to wait and called Alicia. She asked what happened and confirmed that he was with her. Eventually, she notices that there is also a girl here whom she cannot stand, just like him. She wants to apologize and find out which house he's from. He agrees to talk to her, after which Maria and Vul announce their affiliation with the Ark house, and Alicia Miri clarifies that she and Art are also connected to this house. 2 maids are discussing what to tell their master about what happened today. One of them is surprised and suggests they go. When he tells Alicia that the Ark family, she explains that no. He is surprised by the problems after admission. She then explains that the children of aristocrats have gathered in one academy and wonders if this will cause problems. She says it's spacious, while the other explains that this is the academy's training ground where they were asked to gather, and the Absolute is still missing. Following this, she talks about Art's behavior, and he explains that his father will scold him again and wonders why he has to go through this. He reports that the Ark family faction has gathered in a large room. Meanwhile, the group is surprised, and the girl turns to the Absolute, saying that being popular is tiring, but they are with him. He advises not to take it seriously. The girl suggests leaving because of this attitude. Absolute says that they are rude. And then he asks what they are looking at and explains that they are looking for death. The Absolute changed the atmosphere. The girl is surprised. At the same time, he runs, and she screams at him to calm down and says that Art looks like he is ready to jump into the fire. The Absolute analyzes the opponent. The man asks to avoid conflicts, then addresses the audience. Besides, he says that they just got in, and they're already rowdy and energetic, and she's trying to hold him back. Teach Toto is in charge of Class A and is introduced to them with respect, but warns them that it is inappropriate to stare. In addition, the man offered to use the premises for training fights. Absolute and she are talking. She is surprised. Eventually he starts with them and she is surprised. She asks him not to talk nonsense. He explains that the enemy is the Absolute, and the girl is surprised. After which he says that she always smiles, and she is surprised and asks why he says that. The man orders them to go. Absolute apologizes for the wait, explains that this is their first time communicating, and calls himself Art, the hero. The other man says he knows and is surprised by his condition. When he says he knows a little about the Absolute and is lucky to be fighting him so soon, the other explains that he will get straight to the point. Absolute stated that his victory would stop the attacker. He then reveals his knowledge of the interlocutor's family's connection to a dark organization and accuses him of cruelty to the Beast Woman girl. She claims that Art is talking nonsense. He promises to admit his mistake if he loses, and does not understand what they are talking about. Following this, he clenched his teeth and fist, explaining that he did not dare look down on others. Absolu forbade him to start. The man asks Art to stop calling his classmate a criminal. Meanwhile, he shouts from the road and delivers a powerful blow, explaining that this is a hero's attack that destroys true evil, and orders him to receive the blow. A man creates an explosion, and then Absolute shouts that this is a holy magic technique that defeats villains, and explains that he does too. He claims the villain is like him alone and calls him a hero. The other two shout that they must stop the hero and strike their master, who has withstood the holy attack. At the same time, Absolute screams that he is considered pathetic, and the other says that he thought it would work and expresses surprise. He suggests using the holy sword, but explains that it is too slow, and delivers a powerful blow to the opponent's face. Moreover, the Absolute claims that the interlocutor has no talent and it is better to train with a sword, while he laughs, lying on the floor among the rubble. He claims he feels no pain and explains that he will not lose because of the Arc family's suffering. Furthermore, the Absolute says that he must help everyone in her, and then suddenly runs away, screaming for them to die. He says that he will not allow someone else to die, and the wounded man is surprised by his fearlessness and determination. In the end, she screams that Art. He claims that he has no powers, and the Absolute says that he has the skills of a hero, but in reality he is just a small degenerate who only knows how to shout about his rights, and calls him a weakling. After which he shouts that he will crush and save her, and he explains that he is evil and the worst thing in this country. He promises to meet ally of justice. When he shouts, she remains silent. The Absolute believed that killing him would save everyone. Then he laughs, looking at the unconscious man on the floor, in front of a group of people. Then someone calls him Lady. Absolute orders Misto to tie the hero to a pole, Oriana to watch him, bring the other teachers, explain the situation to them, notice the strange movements, attack and get to work. The three girls are then surprised. She explains that she did nothing of the sort and asks what they're saying, wondering who's behind all this. He reports that this is not a dream. Meanwhile, the Absolute claims that she is the Holy Lady. She is surprised and says that they are talking about Alta. And then she is surprised that the Absolute is going to unite with the church and wipe their family off the face of the earth, and says that things are too bad. She cried out, and he and the other man asked what had happened. At the same time, the Absolute turns and leaves, and she remains silent, not understanding. She sits down on a bench and says that he didn't let her apologize, and the two men walk away down the hallway, and below, several people are sitting at a table and eating. Besides, the woman says something, and he is surprised that Mr. Absolute beat the hero. She explains that he did it without a sword or magic, but with his bare hands. The girl confirms that she, too, is amazed. He wants to try harder so he can be in the same class as his master. The other one says he's envious and would like to see. The woman also asks to see the Absolute. He explains that he has no intention of communicating with Mirai's family and will listen to them later. The woman reveals that the hero was harassing Vul. The Absolute is surprised and asks what's wrong with him. She offers to take her to a cafe after the academy. He agrees. In the end, he agrees to convey the words to Ms. Alicia. She thanks the gentleman and expresses joy. After which, Absolute is surprised by the delicious Mont Blanc that is offered to him and thanks for the treat. He asks Maria if she wants to lose her eye, and she apologizes. When she first sees someone eating with such pleasure, he offers to serve it in the mansion, if she doesn't mind. Wool advises against overeating, suggesting that one should enjoy food before the end of life, and asks if the hero has had any problems this morning. Then she says that he started being so familiar with her that she immediately felt disgusted. Absolu insists that, in his absence, they need to defend themselves. The woman notes that Maria protected him. The man adds that heroes don't respect others' personal space, and the two women agree. He then says that an apology is important and inevitable, and believes it would be better if it were sincere. The man explains that now that the hero's execution was prevented at the request of the royal family, it has become a major concern for him, and he intends to move in that direction. The Absolute claims the hero's upbringing by the Mirai family was insufficient. He warns against showing sympathy towards them. The hero assures them that everything will be fine and that true evil is merciless. Meanwhile, he talks about the three main factions in Linen: the Royalists, represented by Marquis Mirai, and Alicia, and how his decision to become a villain affected the power within the faction. Absolute explains that the neutral faction maintains the balance between the sides, and the woman says that this is her chance to cut the hero off from the Mirai family at any cost. And then he says that Marquis Mirai's ignorance is a huge disadvantage, and the two bow in respect. Absolute asks Marquis Mirai and Miss Alicia to sit down. Marquis Mirai apologizes to Absolute for the stupidity he caused and calls the offense unforgivable. At the same time, he asks Marquis Mirai why he kept teaching the hero, and the Marquis objects that he did not say that the Arc family were criminals. Absolute notes that this is trash. The man shouts that the woman ruined everything. The woman with the scythe apologizes. The other man demands silence and promises only to apologize. He also threatens to kill Marquis Mirai if he does not stop the farce and asks where he is. The Absolute announces three demands in the arc: wall restoration, compensation, and the removal of the heroes from their positions. The engagement can only be broken upon full payment. Objections are not accepted. Furthermore, the man explains that Marquis Mirai will be taken to the king, and the two men on the sofa are surprised and say that this is a royal order. He denies guilt, expresses surprise at his accusation, and she shifts the blame to Alicia. Absolute, calling himself a marquis, asks a question. Ultimately, the responsibility lies with them, and the king will listen to their excuses. The woman says that raising a hero was their responsibility. The man asks to be taken away, and he confirms this to his father. He said that the letter and document from the royal family would arrive later, after which she apologizes and admits guilt for the trouble caused. And he says that Art showed hostility, pestered the maid, attacked the teacher and called them criminals. She admits her guilt and is surprised by the loneliness in her suffering. When Absolute claims that he is not to blame for the family conflict due to Art's actions, she explains that she did nothing and will not listen to him, calling it stupidity. She refuses. She then asks for forgiveness and says that he is the one who suffered, and then explains that she should not have done that. She's surprised that it's healing magic. The Absolute calls her Alicia Mirai, and they stand facing each other. Following this, he claims that she is not to blame, and explains that only the crazy hero and the father who neglected his duties are to blame. She denies guilt, and he wanted her to shift the blame onto him. Meanwhile, the Absolute declares that he is harmful to this country and claims that there is no point in feeling resentment or anger only towards him. It is better to consider that all the blame is on him. She suggests hitting Art instead of them because they're innocent. He feels foolish trying to solve the problem on his own. He understands why they're so valued. And then he asks if she is in her right mind, then calls Alicia Mirai and proposes an alliance. She admits to not understanding and asks about what is happening. At the same time, she is surprised, and the Absolute explains that for convenience, it is better to conclude a wedding contract if she goes, and asks her to leave Mirai's family and the hero. He said it was time to start. He also says that they are breaking off their engagement, explains the need to pay compensation in the amount of 1 billion and the ban on visiting the academy, and she asks if he wants to say anything. He apologizes to Alicia and explains that something strange happened to him. In addition, the Absolute felt delight. The body floated, consciousness was distorted, rationality disappeared. He said that he couldn't control himself and didn't intend to enter into conflict with the Absolute, and she was surprised and denied that she was taking strange drugs. In the end, he says that if they were preparing something, he is disappointed in her, and she explains that everyone thinks Absolute is a villain, but he takes the competition seriously and is proud of it. After which she declares that she will not forgive the insults, and he admits that he really is a villain and someone had to do it. She says that if the Arc family does evil, it should be investigated by the state, and asks if he understands what it's like to be injured. When the hero explains that power shouldn't be used selfishly, the heroine replies that she needs to make amends, leave home, and become an adventurer, contributing to the country's new status. He begins to speak. He orders Alicia to leave, then apologizes, and she says, "Take care." She then explains that she neither hated nor loved Art, but rather considered him an annoying little brother, and now at least she can relax. Absolute says he can't. She says she only has bad memories of her father and Art, but the Mirai lands are her home, and she is their mistress. Following this, she declares that she cannot give up everything for the sake of happiness. She says that they put the blame on her and to relax, and then she is surprised at what kind words. Meanwhile, she explains that she can't do that and says that the wedding was wonderful, but it's a bit of a shame. The Absolute fights his opponents, striking with his sword. The inscription states that in this story, his role is to commit evil. And then he stands with a weapon against the backdrop of the full moon, shouts that he is a villain, and sharply hits the ground with his hand. Absolute stands among the fallen knights with a bloody sword. At the same time, he screams that he can't take it anymore and explains that his power awakens in the rain. Then he finds himself in a room where someone is waking up in bed. He says he feels sick, and the Absolute explains that it's his dream again. He also explains that because of memories of his past life and the ordinariness of death, he killed people without guilt, but he cannot come to terms with this and calm down after so many murders. She claims he is a good man, but the Absolute claims he is evil. He also explains that killing people is evil, even if it's the country's order, and that doesn't justify it. Therefore, he considers himself a villain. She explains that she's a little nervous about returning because her heart is pounding. She opens the door. The girls turn to Alicia. She asks if everything is okay. She eventually thanks him for his concern, then looks surprised. The girl asks Absolute what to do and whether she should say hello. Christina then asks Absolute how he's feeling. He replies that she's as noisy as ever this morning. Christina is confident she'll definitely win today, after which the Absolute explains that it's better to value friends. The man offers to borrow the mist, and she's surprised that they've already become friends and were inseparable during magic lessons. She claims that they sat at the same desk during the entrance exams, and he listens. When Absolute asked Alicia Mirai, she explained that she wanted to help. They held hands, confirming their intention. She says he is the same as the others, and he asks what she means. The girls then promise to collect the notes for Alicia's absence. Leona thanks her for her help, and Alicia apologizes for the late greeting. Leon Surak confirms the joy of meeting. Following this, she suggests calling him by his name, to which he replies that he is already used to it. Maria tells about the letter Absolute reminds about work, then they show the town of Flower in the kingdom of Linana. Meanwhile, a man screams that the devil, and another talks about the remnants of the secret organization of the kingdom of Marmot Gilius. He argues that they can't just give up, they need to take revenge. And then one of them says that it's good that they managed to hire a guide and go to Linana, but the number has decreased from thousands to 50, and the other asks what to do now. One suggests joining the Haomo, a shadowy organization under the auspices of the Ark clan, while the other argues that knowledge will not protect, and one will have to rely on one's own strength to defend the country. At the same time, the man claims to have paid for the service but was not escorted to the Ark family, while another man informs the boss of the arrival of a man who introduced himself as a member of the Ark family. Absolute asks if this is Gilius in front of him, explaining that he has business with them and is interested in their interest in his family, to which one of the men confirms. Moreover, he claims that they hold a grudge against the Groundhog Kingdom and will definitely come in handy. Absolute claims that they have a proposal for the Ark family. Moreover, these are two twin sisters from a noble family of the Surak Kingdom, and if they are sold in the future, they can fetch a good amount of money. She clarifies that they have other goods that bring profit to the Ark family, and he claims that Gilius kidnaps people and sells them to organizations. In the end, he stated that the proposals were clear and interested him, but at the same time he considered them unworthy. The Absolute threatens to teach a lesson to those who continue evil and expels them from the Ark family. He then claims that the Ark family doesn't kidnap people, but rather claims they came to become allies. The man is outraged by this statement. He argues that power can be used to achieve goals, and that it should bring pleasure, while the other explains that he is happy. In response, the Absolute is surprised and asks why he is being treated this way. When he says that this face and these eyes, then he demands to kill him if that is what you want. A man shouts at him not to look down on him. Absolute says he's no longer just evil, but an outcast, and hates everything related to war and such actions. Another man explains that it's a great job and asks about Misto. He then explains that he will release the demon and talks about the entity that got past the Ark family's protection and brought Gilius into the country, and the other man explains that it is a negotiator and says that the other person should also hear about it. She says he has a skill that activates after combat, making him difficult to track. The training ground event resulted in many deaths due to the sheer number of monsters. Following this, Absolute explains that they were members of the Ark family. He orders the girls to be taken with him and handed over to the king later, and the other explains this with a little awkwardness. Meanwhile, one of them expresses fear, and the other calms her down by stroking her head. The two girls say they are noble women from the Marmot Kingdom, and the Absolute says he will ask that bastard a few questions. And then he says that he can't believe that the Gilius was destroyed by one person, explains that the Ark family is dangerous and that they shouldn't have touched this hornet's nest, and also says that no matter how much money there is, it's not worth it and should have been abandoned. The negotiator says his job is to negotiate, but he was forced to move everyone to another country, and he claims that information about Ark's abilities will sell for a high price. At the same time, he says that it's time to clean up, and she explains that it's a spirit and it's strong. He asks what she is doing here, and she tells him that he knows about spirits. Moreover, the Absolute reports that the leader of one gang was also a spirit summoner and asks if he could be acquainted with him. Ark says that he is meeting the negotiator for the first time and asks if he brought these people here, and then is surprised that he dares to bother him like that. He also asks if he can just kill her, and she screams, clutching her chest in the rain. He breathes heavily. The Absolute says he's brave for choosing to ignore it. He explains that he will indeed be killed and marvels at the horror of the situation. In the end, he says that he needs to run away and calms his interlocutor, then casts a teleportation spell. He doesn't understand why the skill isn't working, casts a teleportation spell, calls the other person names, and warns them that they've crossed the line. After which he is surprised by the presence of an object that can suppress the skills of the interlocutor. He explains that it's a special item, created by Lena at the height of technology, due to an assassination attempt on a past hero. He obtained it during negotiations with the king, when the Absolute says that it is effective and important. He stated that he was not going to back down and was demanding information about the plans to release demons during the Liana Academy's field exercises. He then explained that only those involved were supposed to know about this. Absolute admits his misjudgment of the enemy's strength and understands that his time is up. He claims that more resources are needed to uncover this information, but everyone he mentioned remains secret. Following this, he screams that he does not want to die, notices that the one pursuing him is approaching, and says that it is as if he is playing with him. He pushed off from the rock, noticing something unexpected. Meanwhile, the Absolute declares the stakes high and asks if he is ready to end it all, after which he delivers a powerful blow, knocking the opponent back and causing him to scream. He calls it an nonentity and points out that it is the basement of the Ark house, and then an old stone staircase with cracks and flaws on the steps and walls. Absolute puts on gloves in a room with handcuffs on the wall, and the corridor ahead leads into darkness. At the same time, he tells the negotiator to wake up, acknowledges his tenacity and expresses surprise at his endurance, after which he takes the syringe, noting that everything has a limit. Absolute claims that it is difficult for Saint Eliza to test the plan alone, given her age, and adds that there are other participants in the planning and execution of the situation. Moreover, the building with a high tower and large windows is visible against the sky. Saint Eliza reports that the brainwashing of the monsters received from the negotiator has been completed. Moreover, he claims that everything is going according to plan, and the man confirms this. Cardinal Nemuria appreciates their cooperation in the operation to destroy the Ark family. Michael Linana explains that thanks are unnecessary, as they are friends, and is glad he can be counted on. In the end, the woman asks if the contract is in order, and he promises to support her in returning to the throne after the operation. Absolute asks who is behind this and explains that the Church of Linana operates from the shadows, and the man says to enjoy it while you can. After which, the girl with the broom asks to clean the garden, and the man explains that Class A is on vacation after the hero gets out of control. She doesn't understand what they're talking about and explains that she has nothing to reproach herself for. When Absolute explains that she used the incitement skill on the Baron to make him go out of control and wanted to kill him at the right moment, she says that this is a terrible accusation and even if it were her doing, he has no proof. He explains that magic won't help find evidence due to the opponent's skill. She's surprised and asks what to do without evidence. Then he promised to follow through and retreat, and she warned that she had made an enemy in the House of Arc and would pay for it sooner or later. Absolute claims to have witnessed the hero's murder and sensed a sinister energy emanating from the girl. He suggests the church may have been behind it all. The other two argue that the saint, though naive, may have been hiding her true nature. Following this, the actress smiles. The man orders them to sit down. Absolute asks about field training. Meanwhile, he announced that next week, the first-year students were to split into groups and go into the forest in the south of the kingdom to hunt monsters. The deadline for completing the task was 3 days. He says success depends on rank and trophies, and Absolute clarifies that this is a test involving monster hunting and overcoming obstacles. After that, he reminds everyone that time is of the essence. Then the woman yells at the newcomer, forbidding him to clean and demanding he clean properly. He explains that the church's purpose is an art, and that in the original, Christina died, so everything is still unclear. The coordinator asks Ms. Wool to refrain from negative remarks, explaining that after torture, the usefulness of slaves decreases. At the same time, she greets the man, explains that she can move between the mansion and the academy and copes with work, and he says that this guy is quite convenient. Absolute reminds her of the upcoming exam. He suggests she go. He's surprised. The girl rejoices and holds the object in her hands. Moreover, she screams, and then you can see the mountains and the forest. The woman notices the worried look on Absolute's face, but he asks her to ignore it. Additionally, it's necessary to form groups along predetermined routes through the forest to avoid problems. Each group must move along a designated path. The Royal Factions group is shown below. Lady Leon's reveals that the group belongs to the Ark and Lady Leon's faction, and asks the teacher to explain why she was assigned to that group. Eventually, the man explains to Lady Leon's that her safety is important to the kingdom, and she must undergo a trial under the protection of House Ark. Absolute announces that 2 of the Royal Faction's strongest disciples wish to form a group to protect Lady Leon's. He asks if she understands, to which she replies that she will not challenge this decision. After which, Lady Leon's was supposed to join the hero group, but instead found herself in more reliable company. The Ark, Lady Cruella, and Lady Leon's are happy to be in the same group. She promises to help, the man approves, the Absolute says hello. When Leon's Rog says it's nice to meet you, she's not strong in magic, but she's good with a sword, and offers to try together. He turns to Lady Leon's, explaining that he's on her side. She's surprised and asks what's going on. He then orders her to follow his instructions and not be left alone. He explains that he has assigned guards for her protection. She says that, according to protocol, a maid has already been assigned to her and asks if there are any problems. He replies that her fighting strength is sufficient for success in the exam. She asks how Absolute is doing and whether he plans to compete with their group. Absolute replies that only if he wants to. She notes that insulting and provoking is his style. He then explains that her magic is powerful, but it was destroyed in the original, and if he doesn't do this, the creatures will attack his subjects. Therefore, he can't save everyone. Another says that the most important thing now is to suppress the monsters unleashed by the church. Absolute reports a bad situation. Christina is surprised. Meanwhile, she explains that she didn't ask for money. He says that he leaves all questions to someone else. She apologizes for being harsh, and he asks her not to talk as if she left him. He chose Route E, and his companion asked which route they would take in the forest. And then he says that they are not that far from each other on D, and Absolute explains that there is a possibility that they were all gathered together on purpose. He claims that he was lured here to destroy the Ark faction. At the same time, the Absolute says that one must not let one's guard down while the two monsters roar and prepare to attack. She delivers a powerful blow with her wooden bat, knocking several creatures back. Moreover, he warns Lady about the danger of monsters, and she explains that she understood him. She warns of danger, goblins attack with clubs. She also states that they are finished, then yells at Oriana and orders her to stand there, after which she begins to fight the monsters. She says there are many monsters, they haven't gone deep yet. The Absolute stands nearby, silent. He ends up explaining that Misto and the others want to gain experience, so he's hanging back, and the girl says they can handle them, and he offers to take over if more monsters appear. She asks him to prove himself, and he suggests simply observing. After which the Absolute explains that this is nothing to them. The girl offers to drink her water, and the other agrees while he says that everyone is only worried about him. She suggests taking a break after a long battle. He explains that they are not tired. She agrees, the other thanks him, and the girl admires the taste of the water and calls it refreshing, as if created by nature. When the girl explains that she created water using magic, Absolute confirms that it is possible, and the other girl is surprised and says that she is joking again. He's surprised. The girl asks for the barrier to be strengthened, explaining she'll be gone for 15 minutes. Another girl exclaims that it's Chris's magic. He then runs away and she says that the place where the Absolute went has a higher level of magic, and the others notice that he ran away. He reports that the situation has worsened, asks Maria to keep an eye on the surrounding area, and orders Oriana to replenish supplies of firewood and water. He then explains that moving without hesitation means that the Absolute has information about the incident, and asks Browse if he can speak to him for a moment, to which he replies that he is ready to help. She asks what Mr. Ark thinks of him. Meanwhile, Chapter 19 begins with a girl, and the title, Field Exercises. One says that the Church of Linana has a mission to save people and destroy evil, while the other explains that the Duke's House of Ark is too dangerous and evil in these parts. And then the Absolute explains that his power is especially dangerous, and the man warns that if such evil is left unpunished, it could lead to disaster. She advises starting by loosening it. At the same time, Absolute explains that he included Princess Leone in his group and determined their route. He agrees about Absolute Ark, and the woman thanks him. He reports that the princess will be killed. She will be executed, atoning for all her sins with holy fire, and then the Absolute will be blamed for this. Besides, killing another country's royal and dying would be too reckless. A single group of monsters would be enough. The Absolute says he doesn't understand why even a saint hates him so much. She asks if it's something personal. He also claims that destroying the Ark faction is not a crime and asks why Princess Leone needs to be killed. He claims she's an evil princess, and she explains, sitting across the table from him. Ultimately, she believes that the Ark faction does not deserve forgiveness, while he explains that killing a royal from another country could lead to a war, which would be disadvantageous for everyone. She demands mercy only for herself while Ark's group and Princess Leona undergo field training. After which she says that she does not feel much sympathy for Mr. Ark, acknowledges the hero's strength, but is disappointed that he is not on the side of justice, and he explains that he will not side with such people on the side of evil. She claims that, despite her background, she is ready to help people get on the right path. When he explains that it is not worth it, but thanks you for your concern. She doesn't understand where he gets these feelings from and asks what Mr. Ark is to him. He explains that he's a hero, which is obvious to her. He then explains that Mr. Absolute hates fighting, and she is surprised. She's surprised it's a joke, and he explains that Lion is unlikely to admit it, but he can confirm it. He then goes on to explain that their faction is made up of aristocrats who engage in dubious activities and are looked down upon in the country, and that the first time he attended a dinner party, the children of the aristocrats bullied him. She says it was painful and explains that high society is cruel, then asks for forgiveness. Meanwhile, he tells that Absolute extended a helping hand in a moment of despair, after which he realized that he was not what everyone thought. and since then their friendship has become stronger. He was always there and saw how the master fought, gritting his teeth, for good purposes. And then he explains that only during a fight does he openly show his feelings. She is surprised, and he explains that they decided to make sure that the fights would take place freely and that Mr. Absolute would not feel the slightest disgust. At the same time, she asks him about the reasons for his actions, and he replies that he might get angry if he says it directly. She says that it is only thanks to the Absolute that they are here now, and she is glad to be on his wrong side, and he explains that he wants the Absolute to be happy, and that's all. She also claims to admire him, and he explains that he prefers to speak frankly. Then there's a loud bang, and one of the girls is surprised to see him on the other side. She warns. The barrier is broken, and the monster is coming here. In addition, a demon with a club in his hand walks along a forest path. He asks what it is when they are suddenly attacked by a huge monster with an axe. Eventually, the Absolute notices that the monster is clearly taller than the previous ones and clutches his knife, preparing for battle. The woman recognized the high-ranking ogre she had seen in Surak several years earlier and was surprised by his presence. The man warned the princess of danger, after which he says to take the lady and leave, and she explains to call Maria with Oriana, who should help. He declares that he will buy time, and she screams that she will not allow him to fight alone. If anything happens to them, it will be on the Absolute's conscience. Absolute declares that his body is forged in battle to protect Surak, and he will deal with it if anything happens. He will not allow them to sacrifice themselves and considers them comrades in arms. He tells Oriana to call Maria. Oriana agrees. Maria tells him to stay behind. He screams and clutches his head. He then tells the princess that he trusts her with his life, but asks her not to forget the value of her own. She calls for a fight. He agrees and turns to Mr. Browse. Following this, she attacks the monster, stabbing it with a spear. She attacks the demon with her sword, which prepares to strike with a club, then jumps back, causing an explosion. Meanwhile, he asks if the princess is okay, and she replies that he would better take care of himself. He warns that the enemy is capable of destroying them with one blow. And then she distracts the enemy, and he attacks the monster. The monster is surprised that the attack has no effect. The girl activates the power-up and strikes the enemy in the back, who screams. At the same time, she reports a successful attack, and he fights the monster. He reports serious damage and warns of possible additional attacks from the princess. She says she's prepared to give him the opportunity to strike. She also calls for Mr. Browse, and he explains that he won't make it. After that, she warns him to be careful, and together they attack the monster. She calls herself Princess Leone, and he falls to the ground with a sword. He also yells at the princess that he prioritizes his own life and that there is no point in saving a villain like him, and she explains that this is not the case at all. She asks Mr. Browse not to put himself down and says that he is a kind person who sincerely wishes Mr. Ark's happiness, and he explains that one should not speak badly about oneself. Eventually, the woman with the sword picks it up and attacks the monsters. She screams that she can't believe it, and he says it's impossible. She apologizes for being late, citing Oriana, and asks if everything is okay. After which she calls the name Maria. Maria asks if she is okay, and he thanks her and tells her that thanks to her they were saved. When she thanks him for his concern, the man explains that he had to fight several ogres along the way and apologizes for his unsightly appearance. He reports that Princess Leone was wounded while defending him, but it's not life-threatening. Her back is injured. The princess says she's lucky to be alive. He then explains that a horde of monsters is moving here and that they need to retreat quickly, and the other one is surprised by this word. He notices a crowd of people in the distance. He then says that he can't believe there are so many higher monsters in the forest and warns that if they attack, they will be finished, and the woman explains that this is too suspicious and looks like a setup to eliminate them. He asks Maria to take the princess and the others to headquarters, explains that he will hold off the monsters, and then activates the barrier. Meanwhile, she doubts his ability to deal with the monsters, hinting at her own demise. He insists the best plan is to trap them within the barrier. The Absolute explains that the death of the princess will interfere with the service and asks to take her to a safe place. But the woman objects that this is not necessary and asks Mr. Browse to stop. He says that he must repay the debt for saving her. And then she asks everyone to run away together. He says that if something happens to him, he needs to tell everyone that Misto was great, and asks them to go. At the same time, she admits that she is unable to convey the full magnificence of his personality, since she does not know how to lie, and asks him to tell her everything himself. The girl apologizes to Mr. Browse, but he leaves silently, followed by the others. The girl remains crying. Besides, she says that you will have to sweat, and explains this with a smile, and below there are stones and clouds. Absolute says that in a single fight a way out can be found and parries the blow. He also claims that it is worth the risk and takes off to have two creatures jump on top of him. The Absolute strikes, repelling the monster's attacks. Finally, he breathes heavily and says, "Damn!" He says that a villain does not choose where to die, and Mr. Absolute does not run away, but fights to the end. After which she shouts the next one, and he says that if it were Mr. He promises to keep the banner in his heart until the end.